Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of the Strength Coach Podcast, episode 280.5, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Check them out at PerformBetter.com. All right, so we have two states that just opened, Georgia and Tennessee. So I wanted to get two gym owners / managers from those states on to talk about what restrictions they have, how it's going, client reaction, employee reaction, and their biggest challenges getting back open. So first up, I have Rick Mayo, and he's the founder and CEO of Alloy Personal Training in Georgia. I also had Rick on 6 weeks ago, right when the shutdown happened. So this is a nice follow-up to that, since obviously things have changed so much right now. And then after that, Drew Massey, he's the director of Gametime Sports and Training in Tennessee. And we're going to talk to him about his unique situation opening up, since they're not only a gym, but they have a batting cage and a huge indoor turf facility that they use for both training and sports. So lots of useful information here for gym owners and managers about what they're doing and the challenges that they're facing in their case anyway, post-COVID-19 lockdown. So lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Rick Mayo. All right, so now I have on Rick Mayo, who is the founder and CEO of Alloy Personal Training. And if you've listened to the podcast, you know I had him on 6 weeks ago on the first day of the shutdown. So Rick, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Anthony.
Absolutely. Well, you are your state, you're in Georgia, and you guys were the first ones to get this going, to reopen. You have two locations, you said, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But what I was really concerned with in terms of Pat Rigsby did a survey of, he said 1,500 people, and I'm not sure what the geographical location of those people were, et cetera, or if they were, I'm sure they were gym members. But basically, 18% said they were never going back to the gym. 25% said, no, we're not going back till we get a vaccine, which we know isn't the earliest is going to be January. So that's a little alarming if those numbers were right. So talk to us about when your locations opened, what you're seeing with what you guys have to do with restrictions. Let's start there.
Yeah, so we were obviously the first state to be allowed to open. And there was, again, it's a polarizing topic, as you can imagine. So some people were all for it and some people were completely against it. And I think it just depends on your interpretation of the data and sort of where you stand, right? Like what's your motivation in either opening or not opening, whatever that may be. So it's a polarizing topic. So the club that we opened the very first Friday that we were allowed, which is a week ago today, opened, we limited the number of folks that were coming in. So that model was a concept model that we opened, I think 3.5, 4 years ago now, just to try out a new concept. And it's worked out really well, but it's a smaller model. So the maximum amount of people that are ever in there at one time from a client's perspective are 8. And there's only one coach at a time. And so you can imagine there's only a total of 9 people. So the restrictions that we're getting from the government are 10 people, social distancing, as you can imagine, cleanliness, and there's no required masks or anything like that. But it's basically, again, social distancing, use your best judgment, cleanliness practices, blah blah blah. And there's not a lot of specificity, honestly. It's sort of these generalizations. So we opened that club and limited the number of participants just for the sake of public perception, to 4 people per hour. And again, we had been shut down for maybe a month, right, for 4 weeks.
Yep.
And all the time slots were full. So again, it was only 50% capacity available, but it was completely booked for every single hour. And then we'll continue to loosen those restrictions. And again, those are self-imposed, right? This isn't something the government came in and said, you have to operate at half capacity. This was just at that specific facility based on that clientele, which is 50 plus. I think the average start age at that facility is 51 years old. So in theory, at least from the early indications, that would have been the high risk, crowd, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, again, at the availability of 50% capacity, we were 100% booked, if that makes sense. So all good news, right? And that was on Friday. And then the same thing happened on Saturday. Now, we opened our mothership facility, which is bigger and more capacity, on Monday. And we did not impose any restrictions at this facility, meaning we didn't limit the schedule per se. But we knew we would be at a somewhat limited schedule just because you've got these different schools of thought and different camps, right? You have, the camp that says if you walk outside, you're going to die for sure, or you can kill someone else, right? Or, if it's not that, it's like, oh, it's a bullshit. It's the government conspiracy. There's zero virus. It's like, oh, you know what? We're probably somewhere in between. And so, and what I can say to your listeners is, you're hearing from the biggest mouthpieces, because there are platforms for people to have a voice these days. So you're hearing a lot more from Breathe and Die, and this is all bullshit, right? You're hearing a lot from those two in the news. There's clickbait article titles, which, by the way, pays the bills for reporters, and social media platforms where you can do and say whatever you want. Everything's politicized. It's very polarizing. Well, what there isn't a lot of noise from, and the largest group is somewhere in between, right? Who's trying to do their best to navigate all of this with the same data set that everyone else is. And that's the largest chunk of the population. And so we really don't know, right? Even you mentioned like a survey that Pat ran. Well, maybe he only heard from the people that are the most charged about it, right? Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, fear, politically, whatever that might be. So what we found is the people that showed up to the gym were either completely cavalier about the whole thing, or they were somewhere in between and just sort of, just kind of a wait and see, right? Like, well, what's the gym look like? And now we can talk about some of the things that we did to increase confidence. And so we were at 50% capacity this week. And so that's actually really good for us, right? So our normal metric, Anthony, just to give you a heads up, would be to operate at 80%. So this is not the exact model, but let's just say you had the capacity of 10 people, just to keep the math simple. If we were booked 8 out of 10, slots, if you will, or sessions per hour, for every hour that we're open, that would be a good metric for us in normal times. So to open and be able to execute at 50% is over halfway there, in the very first week. And the actual overall restrictions, the expectations were set a long time ago not to open until today, which is May 1st. So we'll see a lot more engagement next week. We already see it because we use a booking software. So we're seeing even more engagement next week. So it's been all positive on our end. There's always your social signalers, right, who are going to say, I don't support your decision to open. And there's not a lot you can do about that. But for the ones that do want to come in, whether they're super cavalier or they are just sitting on the fence somewhere in between trying to do their best to assess the data, it's been a real positive thing. So we have not seen, what you're saying, which is, or what you had heard, which is, people aren't coming back until, there's a vaccine. And we haven't heard that from anyone.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's going to be different in different places. And, in New York, it's obviously right now people are pretty scared. I don't think if I was living in the city, I wouldn't want to go into a gym. But I'm not living in the city. And I feel like, look, as long as things, and I think it was funny, were people kind of coming in and being like, I'm assuming your gym is normally clean anyway. Was there anything that you were doing that you were kind of like, look, we got to make sure that these people, even though we know we were clean, that we have to do to show them that we are doing some extra things? Is there anything else that you're doing to kind of ease that perception?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you some different ideas. And these are all little things. But again, the word that you use, Anthony, is so important in what I want everyone to hear, which is perception, right? And so we're doing things like either leaving the doors slightly cracked to the locker rooms or the front door, or you can install those devices where you can open the door with your feet or with your forearm. Have you seen those where you just bolt them to the door?
I haven't seen that yet.
Yep. So that's in some restaurants even where you can actually use your foot to open the door. Say you're in the restroom and you want to open the door and the door pulls towards you. There'll be sort of a metal L-shaped bracket bolted to the bottom of the door. You just put your foot on it and open the door that way, right? So those type of things. Well, we know, can it be spread respiratorily? Yeah, sure, of course, we get that. But it's just the perception that at least you care. If you'll do those little things, right, and just do a few things that are important, it just shows your customers that you care, and you've probably done all of the other things that you should be doing. So, that's an example. Another example is obviously we have hand sanitizer and cleansing wipes and all of those things readily available for everyone, because we're doing the cleaning because we're a smaller, higher service facility, but we're also putting the burden on the clients. And in some ways that makes them feel good also, right? Yeah. So they know that, like, hey, if I want to double down and wipe down this equipment again, then I can do that. And they've got the resources here to do that. Another thing, we are keeping people away from each other. So we're practicing social distancing. And we're actually designing the workouts so that people can work out in their own space and not share equipment. So in a lot of studio-based concepts, you're sort of rotating around the room, certainly like a boot camp or what we call team training concept, and you're sharing a lot of equipment. Well, now's probably not the time to do that. And so since we're mostly personal training, it's a bit easier to control. But for any facility, I would just recommend doing workouts at least when you first open for the first 4 to 6 weeks, where you can actually work out in your own space just using a few tools. And anyone listening to this certainly understands functional training. As you know, you can do things with a sandbag and a kettlebell and a dumbbell and, a stability ball or whatever that may be, and just leave those things in those areas and let people work in their own space. Even if you're working on the clock in some kind of a metabolic circuit, that would be the best way to do it. So that, we also had a company come in and do an industrial fogging of our facility, and they do everything from every piece of equipment to the air ducts, everything, right? And what it is it kills the virus. And they have these pretty, I would say, aggressive claims on, hey, it's this positive charge ion, it kills the virus for up to 3 months from when we spray. But the science is solid. We've got someone on our team who has a significant other who works on infectious diseases at a university here in Atlanta. And so she looked at it and said, yep, it all makes sense. I mean, it's good stuff. And so we had this company come out, I think it was around $1,300 for about 3,000 feet of space. And they do this sort of industrial cleaning, and then they do this dry fog. And they literally spray every piece of equipment, everything. And it's not toxic. It's fine to touch later. But what we did, and what's important, is we made a video of that being done, right? And then we put that on our public Facebook page, and we sent it out in our newsletter. And said, hey, here's the treatment that we did at our gym. And we linked to the page of this company. If anybody's listening wants to check them out, they're called Pure Maintenance of Georgia, and then go to their COVID section and just to reference, right? And then you might find somebody locally in your area to do it. But the best way to advertise that, Anthony, or to raise that confidence is grab your iPhone. It doesn't have to be, or grab your phone. It doesn't have to be anything professionally produced. And just walk through your gym and tell your story, right? Like, hey, I'm Anthony. I opened this gym in my case, 1992, right? I opened it to keep people in my community healthier, and that's what I'm committed to do. Here's the precautions that we're taking right now, right? We're open for business, but look at what we're doing. And, then you go, right? Here's our foot openers for doors. Here's this fogging that we did. You overlay that. Here's how we're spacing. We're letting you use your own equipment. Here's a client saying how clean it is. We had a great quote on day one. There was a group of folks doing the dynamic warm-up, and they were doing some type of a hip stretch or something. And the lady that was in here is always one that's always has something to say, good or bad. But I love her because you always know where you stand. And she blurts out to the group, oh, my God, this is 50 times cleaner than the produce department at Kroger, which is our local grocery store, right? And everyone's like, yeah, right? Holy crap. I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, there's something to be said for that, right? So we use that blurb as well because, that's important. I mean, I think people, if you're rational and you're going to the grocery store and you're touching produce, right, and you're not wearing gloves or what, I don't know, whatever, you're just as much risk doing that, is probably much more than you are coming to a gym where there's tons of distance. They fog the whole place. They're cleaning every piece of equipment that everyone touches after every single session. You don't share equipment. So there's just 1,000,001 things like that you can do. But I would say trust, cleanliness, safety, those are the value propositions right now coming out of this. So those are the things that you need to be able to promote as a facility and be able to show them if possible.
Yeah. Transparency was another word. Exactly. Like, just show everybody what you're doing. That perception is definitely an important piece of it, but you're obviously doing the work. Rick, let's finish up with just kind of really, the biggest challenge you feel like you've had in opening. Has there been something where you're like, oh, man, we're going to have to, this has been rough and we're going to have to keep doing this and we're going to have to work for this? Because obviously you speak to a lot of, with your licensed franchise, with your consulting group, that you're talking to a lot of people. You're a leader. So what's been the kind of biggest challenge for you?
This is really surprising for me, and this will be a nice heads up for anybody that's a facility owner. Our biggest challenge was our team. And I think what happened, Anthony, and you'll understand this as an entrepreneur, we've been carrying, a little bit of history. We've been carrying our team at full payroll, even though we pivoted to virtual and our prices were a bit less for virtual. Our revenues weren't quite where they were going to be. We lost about 20% of our clients to just fear and freezes and, good reason to quit exercising. As you know, it's not the most popular thing. Not everyone loves it like we do, right? So we had a little bit of churn. And then for the ones that we retained, we had, dropped our revenues a little bit. So when the governor came out and said, hey, we can open our state, shame on me for assuming that everyone would be as excited as I was, because I'd been carrying my team at full tilt. I had not received the payroll protection plan. So, no government assistance as of yet. And I thought, wow, this is awesome because there's a runway to this thing financially, mathematically. So this is our chance to get back to work, right? And salvage everyone's job and payroll and, get back to some level of normalcy. And so it was like, man, game on. So I just, we use Slack as a communication channel, and I jump on there and I'm like, sweet guys, this was just mentioned 20 minutes ago by the governor. We're not going to open Friday because we have this industrial fogging coming on Saturday. We're going to open Monday. I'm so excited. And it was a little bit of crickets and a little bit of just general concern, from the team. And of course, shame on me for not even thinking of that ahead of time. Your coaches and everyone in your business is a human being as well, right? Yeah. And they have their own fears and whatnot. So I'm just like, game on, hell yeah, let's do this, right? And a lot of my coaches were, like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, of course, I was, my knee-jerk reaction, I'm embarrassed to admit it as a leader, but I was a little bit upset. Like, look, I've been paying everyone's full salaries. Get your ass back to work.
Yeah.
But then when I really took a breath and thought about it, it was like, oh, well, they're just like everyone else, right? I've got some that are really nervous, some that are not. Some that are, everybody's all over the board with this thing. And so that was, I think, the biggest struggle for me as a leader was to understand that my team was not as excited as me about coming back to work. And why would they? They were at full pay, right? And they had some fears that I didn't anticipate. And so I needed to then, over the weekend, talk to each one individually on the phone, like, where do you stand? You don't have to come in if you don't want to. I can't pay you anymore if you don't come in because I need everyone servicing real revenue at this point. But I get it, right? And so I think for me, that's the client part's been easy. I mean, we kind of get the psychology of the client. It's my team, which everyone needs, that I was most surprised with. And you've probably heard this, Anthony, the one other challenge that we didn't run into because we tend to pay pretty well. But if you have people in your business right now that are paid less than they could make with the government assistance on unemployment, and I've heard a lot of stories from our groups that we work with. Yeah, that people don't want to come back to work because you can make more money than you were working without seemingly exposing yourself to a virus, and you can do it for 6 months. And so if you have somebody who's working the desk or, maybe in a part-time role or whatever that might be, you may have a hard time convincing them to come back to work, even though you're excited, because they are, in fact, making more sitting at home than they were working with you. So that was a surprise as well. So I would say for entrepreneurs, those are the two biggest challenges, certainly, that we've had.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, my wife works for a big company in human resources, and they're basically what they're doing right away in phase one. And they're not open yet, but they're in their plan was who wants to come in, who's willing to come in, who's comfortable to come in. That's where they're starting. So it might be a good idea.
That's exactly what we did. I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what we did. It's like, okay, wait a minute. The first few responses on the Slack channel were not what I expected. Like, oh, hell yeah, let's do this. It was more like, oh, well, have you considered this? Or, are you reading this article, or have you thought about this? And it was just obvious within 10 minutes that like, oh, no one's as excited as I am. So the next question was, well, who's comfortable and who's not, right? And then, of course, much to my chagrin, most people were not comfortable. And I'm kind of like, there's two sides of that, right? One side of it is like, well, of course you're not comfortable because like you're being paid to not do anything. Of course you wouldn't be comfortable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't want to come back either.
Yeah.
But, then the other side is there were people who were legitimately not comfortable. So the follow-up to that, Anthony, had to be, okay, well, let me rephrase the question. If you come in, I can pay you. If you can't, I'm going to have to furlough you. And that feels like I'm strong-arming them into that situation. So from a leadership standpoint, I just didn't handle it well at all, right? But, in hindsight, and then I was able to recoup by just having personal conversations with everyone, I should have just said that, right? Look, if you're not comfortable coming in, I can't pay you, but that's fine. I'll get it. We can furlough you. You can get unemployment, and we can get down the road from there. We're at a little bit of a reduced schedule right now, so I could have probably done that. But it sort of came across, again, my bad, as saying, look, who's in and who's comfortable? I'm not comfortable. Well, I don't care because I can't pay you. So it just was I shouldn't have asked that question. I should have just said, hey, we're coming back or not. If you're not comfortable, I get it. But here's the consequences of not coming in, right?
What about
anyway?
What about asking, hey, Rick, look, I know you're not comfortable. What would make you comfortable? Like, so if you said, Aunt, I got to have a vaccine, be like, all right, well, thanks. Been great knowing you, because that's not going to happen until January. But, what would make you comfortable coming in? Let's talk about, like, some restrictions we can give on the people, on our own staff. What would make you comfortable to come in?
Well, yeah, and that's a great point. And I think, one thing that was surprising to me that your listeners will also find interesting is the crisis that we're in. It's not always about the crisis, right? So what ended up happening in these personal phone calls that I made to my team was that it wasn't always about the virus, right? You start out with like, well, I'm kind of nervous to come back. And then the conversation shifts to, surprisingly, well, I've been there 10 years. I just don't know what's next for me. And so I'm sure there's a little fear there, but there's also all this time for self-reflection, right? Yep. And all of a sudden it's like, who am I? I'm 29 years old. Where am I in my life? And it kind of goes there. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So it's really not the virus, because I saw all of you guys in here last week working out at the same time in your personal gym, which is our gym. And there was 12 of you in here working out. So I just have a hard time believing you're all scared to come in if you're actually all working out together, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not calling bullshit, but kind of like, hey, like you guys were all in here, so you're really nervous. And it's like, well, yeah, but I'm also thinking blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if the crisis, causes a lot of other things to bubble up to the surface, right? It's sort of like, like you hear the news saying, man, divorce rates are going to go through the roof when this thing is lifted. And I mean, this has changed so many things about our lives. All sorts of sort of trickle down effect, things have come up. And for me, that was one of them that surprised me. And of course, in hindsight, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, how dumb could you be? Of course those things are going to come up. But I just was so excited about the opportunity to reopen and get back to some normalcy. I sort of blew right over that. But that I would say was definitely our biggest challenge.
Interesting. All right. Well, Rick, thanks again for coming on and going over some of the things that you're experiencing now as being one of the first states to reopen. We really appreciate you as always.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you, Ant. Thanks for having me on.
All right, now it's time for part 2 of our special episode here. I'm here with Drew Massey. Drew's the director of Gametime Performance, Sports and Training. Drew, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, Anthony. It's an honor to be asked to do this, man. I appreciate it so much.
All right, yeah, I will remind everybody, you're in Columbia, Tennessee, and
yes.
Tennessee is one of the states that have opened, and that's part of why we're having you on as well, because you guys, I saw what you guys were doing. Also, what I thought was wild. So when did you open, Drew?
So part of our governor started to release the ability of restaurants and retail to open this week. He held off gyms until today, which is the 1st of May. So today actually is our first day of reopening, but he let us know that on Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe. So we had a couple of days to do some things to be prepared for today. So soft opening today and tomorrow for sessions, and then a full schedule will be ran on Monday. But we could be open on a full schedule today. We just weren't ready from an equipment standpoint, and I can get into that later as to why we had to kind of do a soft opening. But yeah, so we're good to go. Businesses and retail are at 50% capacity, and gyms are also at 50% capacity, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit when we talk about the guidelines and things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, and I already posted this on strengthcoach.com, actually, was the Tennessee guidelines for reopening, because it was very clear. There's a lot of them, and we posted it on strengthcoach.com. and just and I like the way they did, it's very clear, but the business process adaptations, there's the consumer protection section and the employee protection. I just want to read a couple, like you just mentioned, you have to limit the facility occupancy to 50%. You have to staff has to conduct regular every 2 hours, disinfecting of high-touch surfaces, equipment, common areas, close all swimming pools, hot tubs, saunas, recreational water or spa facilities, close all basketball courts, racquetball courts, and other places where formal and informal group or team sports may occur. Now, I will, in a minute, we're going to talk about the kind of facility that you have, if anybody hasn't seen my Strength Coach TV episode. You're so there's certain, you have to close water fountains, common areas, break rooms, check-in counters, no self-service options, no coffee bars, smoothie stations, other forms of communal food in facilities. Also, now with the consumers, you have to screen them for illness upon entry. You have to have a little questionnaire asking them, have they had a fever in the last 48, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have employee protection, so they have to work from home as much as possible. Obviously, we know in a gym it's not going to happen. You have to screen them for reporting to work with COVID-19 symptoms. They have to wear face coverings. So you guys have a lot. Again, I don't want to go over everything, but this is a lot of stuff. Give everybody tell everybody what Gametime is, because you guys have more. You're more than just a gym, so you have a lot more to think about here.
Sure. So Gametime is, obviously, if I'm giving you the elevator pitch, it's a performance training fitness facility, and we're all about helping people, whether they are active older adults or athletes or anything like that, meet their performance standards. So within our strength training and conditioning side of the business, we also have a 7,000 square foot indoor turf field that teams can come in and practice on. We can have recreational leagues here. We have one-on-one sports skill lessons, such as, if a kid, we've got a couple of sports skill instructors, baseball, soccer, things like that, that will come in and offer small group or one-on-one training. We have a batting cage in our facility. We have a spin room in our facility for indoor cycle, things of that nature. So all that combines gives us Gametime, which allows us to do, what our mission is, which is to help people perform in their particular area of life to the best of their ability. So that's what we have going on here. So everything that the Tennessee government put out, we had to go over with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we were going to be in adherence to what they were suggesting and what those guidelines were, for sure.
Yeah, it's a bear. What are some of the things that have been the hardest for you? Like you said, it took you a couple of days to kind of know you have to have a soft opening. What were the biggest challenges just with the restrictions alone?
Okay, so I have to go back a little bit and tell you what we did when we first started into this quarantine was when we realized we were going to have to shut down. 2 days before, we invited our members back into the gym to pick up what we effectively started to call the Corona kit. And that Corona kit existed of, they could basically loan out or borrow, so to speak. Our current members could borrow a kettlebell of their choice. If they didn't want a kettlebell, they could do a dumbbell. Then we gave them I'll give Perform Better some props here, Perform Better mini band and a Perform Better super band. So we sent, and they also, just because we were in the South, they also got a 12-ounce Corona beer. But anyway, They did get so they were able. Our members were able to take equipment home with them because we didn't know what people were going to have. That was going to allow us to effectively offer our online services because it was going to allow us to program better, knowing what our members had access to at home versus just assuming that we were just going to have to do everything, via body weight. We didn't know what kind of setup we were going to have. So the challenge opening back up, we lent out, Anthony, we probably lent out 75% of our equipment inventory in kettlebells and dumbbells and bands. The biggest challenge for us was getting all that equipment back. So we knew that when we opened up from a soft opening, we were going to have people come in and bring that equipment back to us. So that's kind of what we did this morning. We offered 2 sessions this morning, and people could use that as a chance to bring that equipment back in. From a standpoint of how to operate, we, like I said, went over those guidelines with a fine-tooth comb and came away with basically 3 main categories. What we were going to ask our consumers and our members to do, what we were going to ask our employees and staff to do, and then how we were going to have to change our business according to meet the guidelines. So for gym owners out there, I think if you look at it all as one big unit, it's a little bit overwhelming. But if you can break it down into those 3 categories, how am I going to operate my business differently, or how do I need to operate my business or gym differently? What am I going to ask my members to do, and what am I going to ask my employees to do? You can break it down and chunk it like that. That's going to make that process a lot easier for you guys, because then you can just go through those guidelines and pick out the things that are going to be easy or things that may present a challenge to you. So one of our challenges is, we have to, our locker rooms and our showers have to remain closed during phase 1. Our water fountain has to close during phase 1. So, reminding people to bring, bottled water. We do have a water filling station that we're that we're letting people open, because obviously those are individual bottles. People can refill, but like our water fountains and our showers and our locker rooms are going to have to be closed for this first phase. So those are just some of the challenges that we present from a business standpoint. We've had to move our spin bikes out into our turf area to maintain the proper distance. So that's one of the things that we had to do from a business operating standpoint, and we can get into what we're doing with staff and members in a second. But we moved our spin room. Basically, we spaced the bikes out 6 feet apart on our turf field. We've done that, so that gives those distance measures. We're in compliance there. We are limiting our class size to 12. And I do want to point this out, because this is one of those things that we looked at and we had to make a judgment call. The guidelines state that you are to operate at 50% capacity per fire marshal. So just because, our building is rather big. I mean, we're 10,000 square foot plus. And if you look at our fire marshal, we probably could operate, quite honestly, like we normally did. But knowing, what those social distance measurements are, we decided to cap our classes at 12. So we're capping our classes at 12 members plus a coach. We moved our spin bikes, like I said. We are not allowing teams to practice. So the rental side of our business is still, quote unquote, closed, and the only sports skill lessons that we're allowing are small groups of less than 12, just like our classes. They can't operate at the same time that our classes are going on from a strength and conditioning standpoint, but they can, and they're also able to do their one-on-one sessions. So that's kind of how we've had to change some of our business structure. So those are some challenges, and I think that would be what I would address first, is how am I going to have to change the structure of my business protocols to meet those guidelines. That's one of the first things that I would look at as I reopen.
Is everybody wearing masks? I know it said the employees were it said encouraged. It didn't say and recommend that customers wear face covering. So is that just optional?
It is. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do with our consumers, members now. So we encourage our members to basically ask themselves, and we have them posted right on our doors. They walk in, big welcome back sign, and then we ask them, we kind of look at them and say, hey, stop here and ask yourself these questions. And those questions are really simple. Have I been in close contact with a confirmed case of somebody with COVID-19? We have a lot of people that are in our medical community right now, so that train with us. So, obviously we're asking that questions. Are you experiencing a cough, shortness of breath or sore throat, or have you had a fever in the last 48 hours? And then the other kind of simple question, almost like a movement screening, if you will, is have you had a new loss of taste or smell? So kind of making just, we're not physically asking them that. We're asking them to stop at our right as they come in and ask themselves those questions and just do a quick screen themselves to think, just to get them more aware of where they've been, what they've been around, and how they're feeling. So that's the first thing that we're doing. And then the other thing that we're doing for our consumers is we bought a non-contact thermometer so that our coaches can take everybody's temperature when they enter the building. And I wanted to talk about this because we had a staff member reach out, not a staff member, it's a member of ours, but she works at a medical facility. And when we announced that, and this was great information, I thought, she told us that sometimes those non-contact thermometers can be off based on the temperature of the room, 4 or 5 degrees. So you're getting some so if you're getting some reading, they're a little bit higher, but people aren't feeling bad, then you may want to have a disposable thermometer as a backup. So we have also purchased and are continually looking for either a forehead thermometer or some of those disposable thermometers that you can just stick under somebody's tongue, so that if they do have a false reading with the non-contact thermometer, but hey, look, I don't feel bad at all, I don't have a cough, that may be just a false reading, then we can go and reconfirm it in the bathroom. If they just go take one of those disposable thermometers, bathroom or whatever, take it right there. So that way, we're not putting people out that may not be necessarily feeling ill or anything like that. So that's how we're going to take temperatures, and that's our pre-screening measures to come into a session. Obviously, we're asking them to wash their hands upon entering the building and as they leave, and then we're also asking their help in cleaning up and disinfecting their equipment as they get done using it after a session. And the 2 classes that we had this morning operated very, very well. And people are just really happy to be back. I will say that they're just excited to be back into the gym. They're very, very, I guess happy is just the best word to say, because everybody was really, really excited. I mean, people just hadn't been around folks. So seeing people that they hadn't seen or talked to via Zoom or whatever, just the community feel. And that's one of the best things that people were talking about is this morning was, just having people call and check on them and then being able to see them and things like that. So that's kind of what we're asking our consumers to do. And then as far as masks go, we have encouraged our members that if they feel more comfortable coming into the facility wearing a mask, then they are more than welcome to do so. But we want to make sure that they understand this. I had a mask on the other day and kind of did a couple little things from an exercise standpoint with the mask on. The mask does compromise the breathing, more so in the fact that as you expel that air gets trapped obviously inside that mask until it can kind of filter out and dissipate, which makes your face very hot, and it does compromise the breathing. So we're not making our members train in masks just due to that the compromised breathing pattern that they would have. But if they feel more comfortable, then obviously, if they're going to feel more comfortable, they can do so. But we're not requiring it
What about
for
staff?
our members at this time.
Making staff wear them?
We are making staff wear them. So just because staff are in closer contact with members, obviously, if you're coaching and things like that, then we are making our front desk staff wear those for this first phase, and our coaches are going to be required to wear them as they're coaching, because obviously coaching and things like that is not as taxing as training. So the coaches and things like that in our one-on-ones, that's exactly what we're asking our staff to do as well.
Drew, any pushback either from clients or staff, like, hey, this is too early? Because obviously, like we're talking to Rick Mayo earlier, and there were some people that were feeling a little bit like, hey, I don't want to come in. You shouldn't be opening, or staff that is like, hey, I don't feel comfortable coming in.
We haven't had any pushback from. Now, again, I will say this: we do have a smaller staff, so certainly not as many as Rick has down there. But we have not had any pushback from staff. We have had a couple of members, and I wouldn't call it pushback, but there just have been a couple of members that have reached out and said, "Hey, I have an immune system. I'm immunocompromised. I don't necessarily feel comfortable back in the gym yet." Or, hey, I want to see family members over the summer, so I don't know how comfortable I am being around, 12 people that are breathing heavier, perspiration and things like that, and sitting on benches. So, one of the things that we said is that's perfectly fine. If you don't feel comfortable being back in the gym yet, that's okay. We are still going to give our online, what we were doing from an online standpoint, we are still going to continue to do so for those people that maybe are more comfortable right now staying at home. Or if we do have some of those higher risk people that need to stay home right now. So we're still going to offer those training options via our live sessions, and we're using True Coach as well to deliver online programming to our members. So we're still going to continue that through May for those members that may not feel necessarily as comfortable coming back in as some do, and we completely understand that, and we're sympathetic to that.
Yeah. So. But real quick before I get on, just on that note, I think everybody should keep going. Let's say tomorrow everybody's allowed to come in, no restrictions, whatever. I think everybody should keep doing this because, you kind of answer an objection. Hey, Drew, you know what? I've only been able to come in once a week. Now it's like, well, we have our streaming as well, and we record them, so you can still do the second session at home when you feel like you can't miss. Do you feel like you're going to continue that when you don't have to, quote unquote?
We do, honestly. We had Taylor and I talked yesterday about, I think one of the things that came out of this that is a positive is that, people have had to adjust, obviously, to that online streaming thing. But there have been people that have really enjoyed it. Like we've had people that say, "Hey, if I can't get to class at night, or if I have to work late, or whatever." Is there a way that you guys can still, deliver some of these at-home training services? And we're all in. I mean, I think it's just it obviously could be an upgrade to a membership to provide more value if that's what you want to do, or it can be almost like I said, like you upgrade your phone every 2 years. You might as well upgrade your training plan to include those at-home. The at-home version of what you're doing actually in the gym. I think it's a great way for gyms to maybe generate a little bit more revenue from the members that they currently have. I think the members are going to be, not having a problem paying for that service. So I think that that might be an option. It probably should be an option as gyms try to reopen and recoup some of that lost revenue from the month of March and April. Yeah,
for sure. Drew, let's finish up. Your biggest challenge, kind of. I know you were excited to do this, to get back in. You got your number one assistant, Hope, over there helping you out, coaching.
She killed it, man.
She does. Great. I gotta post a link to that to your Facebook page where your daughter Hope is coaching people, guys. Seriously, this is really good. She's using external cues. She was awesome leading the video. But I'm gonna post a link to that. But Drew, what's been the biggest?
You'll love that.
What's been the biggest challenge for you in terms of kind of reopening? What can people expect? Coaches and gym owners and trainers can expect when they open their gyms.
So I think one of the biggest challenges for us again, this is day one. So, I might have a little bit more information later as we reopen, is that number one, we've had to completely change our schedule due to the fact that our athletes aren't in school at all. So we're changing, getting them in earlier. So we're changing that. That's obviously a challenge every summer, but we're just having to do that a little bit earlier. So we were prepared for that. But some of the other challenges, again, I think, and that's why I'm going to suggest that you look at whatever your state's guidelines are for business operation. That was one of the things that we knew that we were going to ask people to wash their hands. We knew we were going to have to ask people to, not share as much equipment. We knew we were going to have to limit some class sizes and things like that. What we weren't prepared for, I don't think, as much as we wanted to be, was the way we were going to have to operate our facility. Just from a logistical standpoint, we got to get 6 people on this side or 6 people on this side and keep them away, moving the spin bikes out of there. So having that 3 or 4 days to look at how our facility operates, we had to make some changes in mind body to restrict class sizes down to 12. So we're asking people to sign up for classes prior to coming in there so that we know exactly how many people are coming and who we're expecting, and things like that. That has been our biggest challenge. If I had to just nail it down into one, it hasn't been the delivery of the program. I mean, we're coaches; we adapt all the time. Somebody comes in, like, hey, I sprained my ankle yesterday. Okay, great. Then we can make those adaptations to limit impact or to limit restrictions. And I mean, that's what we do. That's why I love our industry so much, is that we are so highly adaptable. I don't think from a business operation standpoint, people are going to have to really consider how they are operating and what changes they are going to need to make to reopen. And I think every state's going to be a little bit different. I can imagine some of those guys in your area and Mike's, y'all may have to require members to wear masks. So are you going to provide those masks for them as they come in? If so, you need to go ahead and buy those. We went ahead and purchased, we got wind that we were probably going to have to take temperatures about a week ago. So we looked into it Monday to make sure that we were going to have it. And it's still not going to be here until May the 8th. So our non-contact thermometer. So those are the things that I would suggest folks really kind of start to look at, is how am I going to operate my business and what are those procedures going to look like from a business standpoint? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get you and Rick on here. You guys are the first ones to open. I wanted people to kind of see, because this is probably going to be a lot of similar stuff. So, Drew, we really appreciate you coming on and talking about your experiences so far on day one and what you had to do to prepare for this. So, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I'm in good company when I'm in there with Rick. Rick's a great guy. He runs a great business and a great program, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm super happy to do this, and if I can help in any way, people can reach out to me, Instagram, Facebook, whatever they need to do. So be glad to help as much as I can. Matter of fact, on my Instagram and on our Gametime page, we'll post kind of what we're doing to keep people informed.
Excellent, and we'll post that on strengthcoach.com as well. Thanks again, Drew.
Hey, thanks a lot, Anthony. Appreciate you having me on again.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this special episode of the Strength Coach Podcast. Thanks so much to Drew Massey and Rick Mayo for coming on and sharing what they're doing right now in the beginning stages of reopening. I posted the links to what we were talking about, whether that's the Tennessee guidelines for opening, the full full thing on strengthcoach.com. I'll have a link for that on continuefit.com on the show notes for this. You can go to strengthcoachpodcast.com or continuefit.com or strengthcoach.com. Also, a couple of the other links that Rick was mentioning. Don't forget, we have extended the trial at strengthcoach.com. Instead of 3 days, it's $1 for 30 days, and you'll get access to everything, including the forum where Coach Boyle's on every single day. Remember, that's $1 for 30 days. Also, a COVID-19 resource. We got a lot of stuff going on, including a special forum and some home workout ideas on there. Go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial offer. All right. My name's Anthony Renna. You can check everything out at continuefit.com. That's going to do it for now. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.